There may be a bit of wrinkles in my shirt. Don't worry about that. That's what you get if you live out of a suitcase for a month or two. Now the next selection here I have, I think is worth it for its own historical shock, the shock value. This is what Orwell asked these people who seemed to support Stalin. And he wondered whether they were conscious agents of Stalin. Orwell wondered if these people were conscious agents of Stalin. And in May of 1946, he wrote the following, George Orwell did, in the pages of a journal called The Polemic, which it was short-lived, didn't exist for long. And Orwell says, "What exactly does Professor Bernal mean by fellowship and ever closer understanding between Britain and the USSR?" So you can see that Professor Bernal was some sort of accommodator. He wanted to compromise and get along with the Soviets. He wanted to respect their ways and respect their lifestyle, and hopefully they would respect our ways and our lifestyle, and we could have an understanding in what they call a dialogue nowadays. Well, does he mean, for instance, says Orwell, that independent British observers in large numbers should be allowed to travel freely through Soviet territory and send home uncensored reports? He couldn't mean that, right? Or does he mean that Soviet citizens should be encouraged to read British newspapers, listen to the BBC, and view the institutions of this country with a friendly eye? Does he mean he wants the Russians to accept British ways? Obviously he doesn't mean that. All he can mean, therefore, is that Russian propaganda in this country, in Britain, should be intensified, and that critics of the Soviet regime should be silenced. Pretty dark stuff there. I mean, that's not really what he meant. He was talking out of the side of his mouth, but Orwell's saying, look how ridiculous these people are who say that we should accommodate and have dialogue or whatever with the Soviets. All they mean by that isn't they're not going to change the Soviet system, are they? What they mean is we need to change our system. Now these people are dreadful, and they're only doing this because they found a way to get a measly paycheck, and they don't think that they'll ever find any other way to become successful. They get some notoriety speaking out or whatever, going over to the traitors' side when the nation gets invaded or whatever. These people are all over the place. What we need is people who will stand up against it. There are people who will take advantage of dictatorships everywhere. Almost everybody is willing to take advantage of it. Very few people are willing to fight it. And we're in a situation today where there's not a lot of people who want to fight it. Now, Orwell accuses this guy, Ziliakis, of referring to communist Poland and East Germany as genuine democracies. So Ziliakis is an apologizer for communism and such. And Orwell asks him publicly to confirm or deny, has he said that they were legitimate democracies? And Ziliakis replies, "What I actually said in both the Soviet zone of Germany and Poland was that what I had seen was not parliamentary democracy as we knew it in the West, which was the most mature and highly developed form of democracy, but revolutionary democracy, democracy in the primitive and original sense of Abraham Lincoln's great definition of government of the people, by the people, and for the people." Wow. That's what he saw in Germany, in East Germany, in Poland, in the Soviet zone. He saw government of, by, and for the people. What kind of goggles was he wearing, ladies and gentlemen? So you see what kind of a guy Ziliakis was. Konni Ziliakis, K-O-N-N-I-Z-I-L-L-I-A-C-U-S. Google him, or Wikipedia him, or whatever. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you may know that after World War II, well, during World War II, the Acropolis in Athens there's a famous picture of a Nazi warplane on patrol over Athens, and they've got the Acropolis and the ruins of the Parthenon in the background there, and the swastika on the back of this German Luftwaffe. Luftwaffe means the Air Force, the German airplane. And Greece was in the hands of the fascists. When the war ended, it was taken over, or there were communists inside the country being funded by Moscow. We know now. Everybody at the time was saying, yes they are, no they're not, yes they are, yes, okay, they were being funded by Moscow. Communists trying to take over the government of Greece. And one of the last noble acts of the British Empire, probably up until the Falkland Islands, was for them to invade Greece in support of the democracy faction, or whatever, the anti-communist faction, the non-communists. It was one of their last things. And on page 168 here, Orwell notes, or pardon me, Hitchens notes, that Orwell didn't approve at all of the British intervention in Greece. And Orwell himself had signed a petition to reduce the sentence of this guy Alan Nunn May, a scientist who had handed nuclear formula to the Soviet Union. Why did he think it was okay for the Soviet Union to have Greece, and why did he think it was okay for the Soviet Union to have secret nuclear formula? Now, he refers to the IRD, people who write pamphlets and stuff for the government, British Cold War outfits and stuff. The IRD surrendered later on to what he calls, Hitchens calls, the lavish corruption of the CIA, because he's again blaming the Americans for having so much wealth that it's just bizarre, or whatever. Like, you know, the soldiers who were paid in what in America we didn't consider really great wage. You do a lot of other things before you go in the army. You go in the army you don't go in the army for the pay. And they thought that American soldiers were quite wealthy. Same thing with our intelligence networks. They think the CIA is lavish. And it is, but shit, we're a rich country. Now he mentions here that the mercenary motive may have been there, but it was a minor motive. He says one can eliminate the mercenary motive as the complete motive of why these scoundrels supported the USSR or whatever. But for Orwell, you can eliminate the mercenary motive entirely. Why was Orwell doing what he was doing? Because a lot of people blamed him at the time and said, how can you speak against the brotherhood of the workers and stuff, and how can you fight against the movement of the future? And he was being blamed for this, and they were saying, who's paying you? Who's paying you off? Why are you getting, you know, why are you saying these evil things? You must be getting paid by somebody. And the fact of the matter is, quote, Orwell continued to make no money for his publications, to refuse to charge exile groups any royalties, and in general to act as if the ravens would feed him. Maybe he was too lazy to try to make more money, but it seems like he was just too uncompromising. That's what it seems. Okay, this was the period during which Orwell's Samizdat editions of Animal Farm were being confiscated in Germany, get this, by American officers, and either burned on the spot or turned over to the Red Army. It was indeed difficult for him to oppose Stalinism and Western imperialism at the same time while attempting to hold on to his independence. So how do you like that? You're fighting against communism, and your little book, Animal Farm, is being suppressed by the Americans, which is the only hope the world has at this time, even though he didn't seem to think much of America. Now, the only thing that you have in a dark, dark time like that, when everybody, even the good guys, are bad, the only refuge you have is philosophy and ideas, which is exactly where Orwell went. To fix the basic ideas in the most basic and fundamental way. He did his best. He tried his best at that. So philosophy is where you go when you're in a tight spot where even the good guys are bad. Then you need to fix more than just, you know, you don't just need to get a new group of people together on a new agreement, because it's for nothing. Everybody there believes things that are wrong. That's why libertarianism's no good, at least for another 50 years or something. I mean, we've got to get the educational system fixed first.